I want to just kind of step back for a second because I know that what happens in all of the political conversations is that we tend to like to marginalize ourselves into factions, right? So you've got the working class over here and the blue
Mm.
collar workers over here, as if they are divorced from the manufacturing companies themselves and the corporations who are manufacturing goods, but then also purchasing those goods and needing to, use those goods in their own business lines. And so I think that what it is really important for us to do is to remember that the economy is powered by workers, and that we also need to understand that there is such a deep connective tissue there that it's not just them versus us. And that is the thing that the other side tries to do a lot, is to pit business owners and corporations against the actual people who powered them. I think that Kamala Harris is going to go in and she's going to have a really great conversation just to that effect that I just mentioned. It is the people who power our economy, and we need to have manufacturing here in the United States to make sure that we're growing jobs. That's important. Obviously, imports are important too, but we can't just continue to say we're going to throw blanket taxes out there that end up being taxes on the American public and our pocketbooks, because it doesn't necessarily, affect the overall economic bottom line in a real improvement way. So I think that what she's going to do is she's going to actually speak to the people. She's going to speak to the workers and remind us all how valuable labor is to the fundamental fabric of our economy and our society. She's been doing that all along, and I think she's going to do that again today.
And is Pennsylvania the state that most needs to hear that message from her? Is it the most appropriate forum to be delivering it, knowing how critical, of course, that state and its electoral votes are to the outcome of this election?
Surely. And, remember, Pennsylvania is a home of American manufacturing, steel industry. President
Mm.
Biden talks about,
Yep.
his roots there in Scranton, where he's from, working class community. His father was a laborer. So absolutely, this is the perfect place for her to be bringing home this message where there are generations of families who remember a time when you were a proud union member, a proud working person, a proud manufacturing, employee who cared about your job, was able to put food on the table for families, had a good income, was able to own a home. The price of inflation wasn't so crazy that you couldn't buy goods and put food on the table. And so there are people there who remember how fundamental the manufacturing industry has been to our American economy, and also are experiencing some of the pain of having lost a lot of that. So I think this is absolutely the right audience for her to have this conversation.
Well, and of course, Aisha, she approaches many of her conversations around the economy with her background as someone who was brought up in a middle class family. She has emphasized that part of who she is quite a lot in much of her messaging. She's emphasized other parts of her identity, though, a bit less, including the historic nature of her candidacy as being a woman of color, the first ever, leading a major party's ticket in a presidential election. Of course, she was asked about that kind of demographic question and black voters, black men in particular, in an interview with the National Association of Black Journalists earlier this month. I'll remind our audience here of her response.
I think it's very important to not operate from the assumption that black men are in anybody's pocket. Black men are like any other voting group. You gotta earn their vote. So I'm working to earn the vote, not assuming I'm going to have it because I am black.
But when we consider the earning of the vote or the explanations as to why that vote should be cast for her, does her identity not play a role? If her identity is someone who had a middle class upbringing is supposed to play a role in how voters view her, the way she approaches the economy, why can't it go for other things about her as well?
I don't think that that's what she said at all. Kamala is Black. Kamala is also Indian. She's a
Mm-hmm.
biracial American, like so many people in this country. We are a multiracial society. And here's the other thing about our demographics is that we are also shifting in our demographics here in the United States, where we are seeing a new American majority of people of color and multi-race people who are absolutely on track to be the majority of the population of this nation. So what does that mean? Certainly from an electoral electoral power standpoint, people of color will ultimately be the outnumber white voters in terms of their electoral power. That is the trend that we are seeing. That's what the demographics say. This directly relates to, who she needs to appeal to in order to get out the vote to win. And that's for, candidates of any party on all the sides. But also, when you think about it as a more macro conversation beyond just this political cycle, our economy, our consumers, largest consumer group, one of the largest consumer groups in this country are African Americans. The number one business owners, folks who are starting businesses at a more rapid clip than anybody else in this country, are Black people, Black women in particular. 90% of the businesses in this country are small businesses, many of which are powered by people of color. Demographically, and from a market spend capacity, we certainly are powering the market as consumers, as people of color. So this is a macro trajectory that we are seeing in our demographics right now shifting. And here's where I think the fine point on this I'll make around this conversation is as it relates to politics and demography is that what corporations have always known, what businesses have always known, is that it's good business to do right by people, no matter who they are. And what you're seeing from Kamala Harris is embodying those values of inclusivity, of diversity being an asset, right, to the bottom line. What you're seeing on the other side with the Republicans is a real assault and an attack on diversity. An attack on diversity and an attack on inclusion and an attack on anybody who recognizes the power, and not just the power from a social context, but the power in our society of really embracing the majority of the people, certainly, and reflecting and representing their values. And so I think that, Kamala Harris's conversation across the board, be it on culture, be it on her own identity, be it on her economic policies, is absolutely reflective of where we're going and reflective of the demographic makeup of our society.
Well, I'd like to focus on another demographic as well, specifically women, in the way that both of these candidates are approaching the vote of women in this election cycle. We heard just this week from Donald Trump about this notion that he will be a protector of women. This is what he said, Aisha.
As president, I have to be your protector. I will make you safe at the border, on the sidewalks of your now violent cities, in the suburbs where you are under migrant criminal siege, and with our military protecting you from foreign enemies, of which we have many today because of the incompetent leadership that we have. You will no longer be abandoned, lonely, or scared. You will no longer be in danger. You're not going to be in danger any longer. You will no longer have anxiety from all of the problems our country has today. You will be protected, and I will be your protector.
So it strikes me, Aisha, that he's really focusing on kind of ideas of physical protection here, of physical threats that people could face. Kamala Harris has been talking a lot about the protection instead of rights and freedoms. That's a lot of where her messaging has centered on. What wins out?
Well, let me just first tell you how offended I am, and I speak on behalf of more than half of the population, women who make up more than half the population, how completely insulting and offensive it is for Donald Trump to throw around a very old age patriarchal trope to suggest that all us little women need is some big mouth guy to run around and protect us, when in fact it's him who's causing the things that make us most afraid and most fearful. I think that, 57% of women fired Donald Trump and rejected him in the 2020 election. 57% of women. We certainly would never feel safe in a room alone with him, because he has said that he grabs them by the you-know-what, and he has been found liable for sexual assault. This is not someone who is anyone's protector, and certainly no woman's protector. And the fact that he would even, declare that really reflects to a very antiquated sense of patriarchy, and this kind of way that he is moving through his campaign, trying to galvanize a very bygone golden era of men thinking that they are dominant to submissive women, that they are just there to take control of and to protect and whatever other language it is that's being used, I do believe that it's going to turn off. It has already turned off so many if you just look at the conversations that are happening out in the public discourse. And when 57% of the women reject you, and that's how you show up, let alone assault on our health care, I don't think that it's a winning strategy for anyone other than men who have that same attitude.
Finally, Aisha, in our final minute with you, whether it's women, Black voters, any of the demographics we are talking about, just the American electorate as a whole, I think we know that a lot of this outcome could be dependent on just whether or not people turn out. What is the winning strategy for the Harris campaign to actually drive voters to go cast a vote?
Yeah. I mean, that's really important. You've seen so many different constituent groups based on ethnicity, be it Black or Latino or, demographics, if it's women, if it's LGBTQ folks, all come together saying we support Harris, including, by the way, white dudes for Harris, right? And why that matters is because the Harris campaign, aside from just having a multifaceted, diverse coalition that literally reflects the entirety of America, also has a very strong boots on the ground game. So across this country, she has thousands of field offices where there are volunteers and operatives who are going out, being deployed into the community all day, every day, meeting with voters, talking with voters, sharing information, hearing people's concerns, listening to their ideas, being able to take those back to the campaign and help shape the way that she's thinking about the way that she would lead and serve the American public. The thing that is really most promising right now from a campaign apparatus, if you compare where the Republicans and the Democrats are, is that the Democrats have a very wide, far-reaching boots on the ground strategy in almost every state. And that includes, of course, the big swing states that they have to win, but other states as well that we didn't even think were going to be in play, like North Carolina, for example. And so at the end of the day, all politics is local. And that's what she's doing, is she's getting out there and talking to people locally.